and I'll repeat those contact details at the end of the show. But to begin with, I'm joined by Chris Chalkley and Liz Pendleton from People's Republic of Stokes Croft. Hi, Chris and Liz, and welcome to Dialect.
Hiya.
Hello.
Now, Chris, we are actually recording Dialect these days in PRSC. What is PRSC?
Oh, I really don't know, Tony. It's beyond me.
Is it really a People's Republic? Have you got your own passports?
No, clearly it's a dictatorship, an evil dictatorship. No, well, it's funny you mentioned the whole passport thing because the inspiration for starting PRSC goes back to that Ealing comedy, Passport to Pimlico. When I was painting a wall in Stokes Croft way back in 2007, we just began to josh about the fact that nothing could happen in this area without the say-so of the council. And people kept asking me whether I had permission to paint that wall, and I said, of course we should do because it's our wall, and that evolved into a whole idea about bottom-up change, really. And we talked about the film Passport to Pimlico and how there should be an element of independence, and PRSC was born in that moment, really.
But you need some money to do anything, don't you? I mean, especially a building like this, you can't just walk in and squat it.
No, that's been at the centre of it, is to actually evolve a strategy where we have a model that allows us to be self-sustaining. So my background has been in small business, and I was a wholesaler of china and glass for a very, very long time. And presided over the demise of the Staffordshire potteries, and I had the foresight to buy all the requisite items for starting a pottery, decorating pottery again. And that we did in the Jamaica Street Art Studio building in the Carriage Works. And that has been the engine which has allowed us to generate the income to allow us to have some independence, really. So
how do you manage to do that? Do you have some of the income comes from the commercial side and some from grants?
We've pretty much had no grant money. It's all been self-generated. It's true that I did put a lot of my own money into PRSC to begin with, but I got to a stage in my life when I thought, I've only got so many years on this planet, and I've spent most of my time saying one thing and doing another, and thought that perhaps it's time to put my money where my mouth is. So it seemed like a good idea to back some of the ideas, and so for the last 8-9 years it's been about attempting to put into a concrete form some of the ideas that about the way the world might be.
Well, you are a bit of an expert in ceramics, obviously, and I think it's quite potentially anyway a bit of a revolutionary craft, because it's one of the very basic things, isn't it? I mean, what you need basically is a bit of clay and a kiln, and you can produce stuff that people need and will buy in fairly easy. I mean, you probably tell me it isn't, but in a fairly easy fashion. In fact, I remember reading recently that during the Dark Ages in Britain, things were so bad here that they couldn't even produce ceramics, they couldn't even make pots. So, but you've got something which is actually a fairly basic kind of technology there, haven't you?
Well, actually, the stuff that we sell is the zenith of the
high end,
the manufacture of pottery. And in fact, what we sell is decorated bone china, and that has been the preserve of the elite throughout history. The history of the Staffordshire potteries is that the working class made beautiful china for the rich, and so what we have done what I think we're doing is to take what has traditionally been the medium of the elite and turning it on its head and making it subversive. So we have mugs that have got Karl Marx and talking about his definition of socialist utopia, and we have mugs which talk about anarchy, and actually the physicality of our mugs is quite anarchic in the way that the print is applied. So it's taking on board all the fine art elements and is in some way a perfect vehicle for message.
Well, that's the front end maybe that people see, the shop, etc. But Liz, you're more behind the scenes. What other things is going on here at PRSC?
Well, we've got the event space downstairs below the recording studio that we're in at the moment, which has an array of cultural activities in it, artistic and entertaining.
Give us an idea of a couple of recent things that have been on there.
Okay, so we've had some great music events. We had also recently the guys from Ecomotive doing a week-long workshop on how to build your own home in a week, which was amazing. They had some fantastic speakers and some really interesting tutorials and kind of hands-on practical advice for people interested in self-build. And then actually at the end of that, their closing party was a DJ set by one of the Jungle Brothers, which was absolutely amazing as well. So a real mix of stuff
I hope
going
you're
on.
recording some of this stuff to sell in the shop. It sounds great.
Yeah, we kind of should be, and there's a bit of a route to take with that, potentially.
You need to put a wire from down there to up here, and then we can record it.
Chris wants to do, it's Stokes Croft Radio, Stokes Croft TV, and all sorts from the media.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about how the space gets used, it has also been used for, throughout the history of PRC and since its inception, we've provided space for political foment, if you like. The No Tesco campaign essentially ran out of Stokes Croft. The yard is used for producing banners and various things for various demonstrations. And actually, the room we're sat in and the building we're sat in is about social change. So we're in the process of setting up a share issue so that this building can be communally owned through a land trust. And this type of thing is central.
Is there really a need for this revolutionary thinking today? I mean, that's kind of, Che Guevara, 1950s, 1960s, kind of has been, really.
Well, I take it that you're putting that comment to me with your tongue firmly in your cheek. It seems to me that the debate about privatisation versus public and community ownership is central to the way our world needs to be. What we have currently is a world that is increasingly dominated by corporate interests, and in my view is taking us in directly the opposite direction in which we need to be.
But have you set up PRSC as a kind of corporation in any way?
Well, it's actually a community interest company. It has a mission statement and a set of values, and actually the process of investigation of institutions is central, in my view, to outcomes. So part of what needs to be done is to actually look at the way institutions run and to produce better institutions, better organised institutions. And
amen.
So the land trust is, for example, the land trust movement is central to that. When we live in a situation where increasingly property is owned by a very small number of people, and we have a banking system that funnels all the money into property, so we have a property bubble, so that the masses find it increasingly impossible to own their own spaces. You suddenly find yourself in a massive debate about the nature of property and ownership.
But what can you do about it practically here?
Well, I think this is really important because you got two options. Either you go, it's all too big, and it's all too big and too scary and there's nothing we can do, or you think, well, perhaps we can do something by example. So if we can work out a way of doing it here, and what happens in the streets, the visual aspect of what we're doing is a metaphor for that. If we start to change things where we are, then and then people come to see what happens and how that works, then you inspire social change elsewhere. That's kind of the idea. So, for example, in the Bear Pit we have a cube which currently has got essentially advertising about TTIP, about global warming, and I don't know many places where you will see that. And that has been something we have fought for a long time. And it leads into a debate about which the councils begin to take on board, which is about how our city should look. So by doing these little things, it leads to big things.
Tell us about some of the groups that you have in here. And I wonder if, Liz, if you can see that the PRSC is having an effect on the ground. Because Chris talked earlier about bottom-up change.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think it's very easy to think that you're making that change without engaging in consultation with the community, and actually the community space that is available downstairs and the kind of community that we have within the artists' tenancies and the people who engage with PRSC is a way of having that consultation and that engagement and understanding what effect we are having or what effect other areas of people's lives are being affected by what systems. So, you know, we are actually quite a large group who communicate effectively on this sort of, you sort of referenced earlier, that's a bit of an old, kind of model, but actually having a space where people come together and connect on the same wavelength and discuss and important issues that are affecting their lives. You know, we're all feeling the squeeze. We're all aware of the problems, and we see it for ourselves on a daily basis. And I think for me, one of the main reasons that I became involved in PRSC is because I felt compelled to join some organisation that was actually doing something very active, not just sitting around and talking about it. You know, this feels like an organisation who are prepared to take the bull by the horns, do some slightly radical and alternative things because we're all affected by and moved by the things that we see that we're not quite aligned with. So, yeah, I mean, there's a couple of projects that spring to mind to reference your questions. Bristol's Housing Action Movement Group, which you probably know as well. They had a benefit gig here just before Christmas. We had a couple of bands playing. We're raising money, and we had a food bank on the door so people could bring in spare food to kind of support those in need in housing and their situations. And you know, that's really important that we're connecting with those groups and making a difference and making it possible for them to, facilitating them raising money. So
what's your vision of this part of the city? How would you like to have changed in 10 years' time, say?
Gosh. Well, I wouldn't, actually. I
suppose it's changing anyway, isn't it?
Change is the only constant. Change is inevitable. You either accept what's happening or you get stuck somewhere along the lines. And I think that Stokes Croft represents something very interesting about change. And you know, it's a pattern that you see in other places, but Stokes Croft has got something very unique, and it feels exciting that the change might actually take us in a direction that hasn't been done before, and it's very much needed. So I'd just like to see it realise its potential and be protected from the forces that might otherwise alter that.
It seems to me almost like everywhere you step nowadays, you're allowed in, but only for a fee. You know, that there's a financial reason for you to be allowed into somewhere. More and more that's happening. You know, that a lot of public space, libraries being closed, that sort of thing. And I suppose what I'm saying is, are you actually able to make a bit of a difference so people can come into PRSC without necessarily being told you've got to pay X, Y and Z to come in, or we're bringing in here to make money out of you? Because that's definitely the feeling out on the streets, isn't it? Is that people are actually giving to each other rather than buying and selling. They may be buying and selling some stuff, but you know, there's a much more friendly feeling out on the streets than there is in many of the businesses around here, where you're only going in because someone can make money out of you.
Are you talking about Stokes Croft now?
Yeah. I just think that many people who sort of hang out around here are quite radical, and they want to do things. I mean, part of Free Cycle, for example, that kind of thing, where people are they're not being totally dependent on the financial system for everything.
See, I think we're actually living in another moment of change. A lot of the stuff that's happening in the digital world, our conventional economic system and way of thinking is changing fundamentally. The open source movement the notion of things being free, the way that the economic indicators, conventional economic indicators, don't work so well. So, is that...
Well, no, you're right. I mean, of course they don't. We're being told that there's a recovery. Everyone knows there's not.
And
so we need to actually investigate the theoretical frameworks and the conceptual frameworks, and I think that is happening in Stokes Croft. And we're in a period of transition, and we have to work out how we morph out of the old way of thinking into the new way of thinking, with at the same time bearing in mind that we run within a system, an existing system, where there can be an element of control. So we do with the. Here's a little example with the green capital books that we sell. Because we want to have Naomi Klein's book out there and people reading it, we buy them in for £7 but sell them for £5.
Crikey! What, a lost leader?
Yes. No, it's not a lost leader. It's not a lost leader. Implies that's to make more sales, but the conventional financial indicators.
Crikey.
So some other things we sell for more money, and we recognise that and other things we'll sell at a loss.
But in a way, that's
in
happening in the macroeconomy too, isn't it? Where people are saying, actually, we're not worried about inflation. We're worried about deflation. Prices going down.
But that's not inflation and deflation. That's actually picking your
but
price
it's like
points.
The rules are going out of the window.
Yeah. We are in the Wild West in all of these things at the moment, and I think that's why a lot of the corporations are running scared, because the conventional models of privatisation and controlling their revenue streams are all falling apart.
But empowering the people, because there was a time not so long ago where bartering, you trade me, I trade you, tax evasion, we're all running scared. Don't do you a favour and you do me a favour because of the system. It's breaking out of that and having the confidence to say, actually, bartering and trade swapping predates the economic system that we have now. Nothing wrong with it. So we don't need to be taxed for helping each other out. That's not, no. And being slightly radical about it and challenging those preconceptions is really important.
Apparently, when the collapse of the Soviet Union in the round about 1990, it was the only thing that kept people alive was barter in the Soviet bloc. But anyway, you seem to be painting a picture of this place as a bit of a crucible of ideas. Are you getting those ideas out?
Well, we've now got a radio station set up here, so we got to start. That is part of it. I would say that the voice. For me, all of these things are a process. When I started this, got involved and started it back in 2007, and we ended up having a big battle with Tesco's. What became apparent was that who has voice, and a lot of what goes on is about voice. And so for me, the drive to free up the streets in terms of its visual aspect has been about creating a place where we can have voice. So the Think Local Boycott Tesco mural that is at the top of Stokes Croft, for me, is of profound significance, because it is, to my knowledge, the only anti-corporate mural, anti-corporate piece of advertising anywhere. I don't know of that type of thing else.
Well, normally they get painted out, don't they, by somebody?
Yes, exactly. And then to have actually, on the other end of Stokes Croft, have managed to create ourselves a cube for which the corporates offered us £40,000 a year for that space, and we said no. We now have a space where we could put up a piece for Tony Benn when he died. This is of massive significance for me. And so, in answer to your question, are we getting out the ideas? Well, actually, the next step is a full-on debate in this city about corporate advertising and billboards. And that has to tie in with the debate about graffiti, because when you drive into our city, actually, the first thing you see in the gateway down the M32, the first thing you see is Tesco's, and then IKEA, and then the House of Fraser. So the whole message is this city is owned by the corporates. And actually, the little bits of graffiti and tagging and the dodgy welcome to Bristol mural that has got the guys with the cans and all the tagging, for me, while I'm not going to say that tagging is a positive thing, at least it shows there is a little bit of life going on in this city, and actually there has been a long history in Bristol of not having it, not putting up with actually, and that is part of it.
And you've sort of illustrated there in a way, Chris, where some of these big companies have got so much money they don't know what to do with it. They're sticking advertising through our doors that immediately goes in the bin for millions of people right across the world, but particularly here in Britain and Bristol. There's also a slightly anarchic feel to the city. I mean, it was Britain's second city for many years, certainly through medieval times, and it's much more self-contained than London. It's you can get to know who's running things and get to know your neighbours, etc. It's almost like a village feel to it. So, what do you think effectively you can do to engage people who are maybe intelligent, creative, and have got a vision for the city to actually do something to change things? Because I think that's the main problem here in Bristol is we feel completely hamstrung by Westminster, by London. They tell us what you can and what you can't do.
Well, I think it's coming. I do think it's coming. It's gently catch the monkey and all that kind of stuff. Because just by starting to do things and actually really proper doing things, then it grows. And if you look, for example, at the Bristol Pound and the Bristol Credit Union, these are tiny little green shoots. But this idea of regional autonomy and taking control of your own destiny, which is incidentally quite interesting, one of the phrases that our mayor bangs on about all the time. He always talks about being in control of your own destiny, and that's in a way it's exactly the same as our thing. We make our own future. Those things about taking control are absolutely central, and I'm not sucking up to the mayor or anything like that, but this idea of local autonomy is essential, and I think it's essential for everywhere. If the people the denizens of the rainforest had control of it, they wouldn't allow the mining interests in. We need to take control. That's basically the fundamental of it. And by pushing in that direction, these things are already happening, and it may be little, but everything starts with a small step.
Can you maybe just give us a bit of a teaser of some stuff that's up and coming here, Liz?
Yes. I would say go to prc.org.uk/what's on for the updated calendar of events. But we've got the Bohemonauts and an event on the 29th of Jan by a lovely lady called Fanny Hatstand. She's coming with her fellow musicians, putting on a thing. And what else we've got? We've got some Bristol Cable stuff coming up. All sorts. Too many to mention.
Because they're based here, aren't they, the Cable? Tell us a bit about them.
Fantastic. Independent media, owned cooperatively. Become a member for just £1. And they really work hard to put out high-quality, independent journalism.
Now, you just better remind us of that website again.
prc.org.uk.
One of the things I keep saying to those Bristol Cable boys is that the Manchester Guardian was started after the Peterloo riots, as a result of the Peterloo riots. And I don't think it's by accident that the Bristol Cable started after the Tesco riots. I think there is a synchronicity there, and I see no reason why the kind of organisation that is the Bristol Cable could not be as significant for this century as the Manchester Guardian was and has become.
Well, yeah, because the mainstream media is totally straitjacketed in this idea of all of the national news and international news has got to be commentated on from London.
Yeah.
We don't have to put up with that from here, do we?
So that's it. That's why we've built this recording studio here. There's the idea of this recording studio in our building is to dedicate some of the space we have to actually creating voice. And so thank you for doing that, Tony.
Thank you, Chris Chalkley and Liz Pendleton from PRSC.
You're listening to dialectradio.co.uk, your local community radio run by volunteers. Log on to our website at dialectradio.co.uk to find out more.